It's strange how one dinner can burn itself into your memory like a scar you'll never quite stop tracing with your thoughts. That night, I remember the way the air felt. Thick, suffocating, like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting for someone to break the silence. My fork hovered over a piece of cold chicken I didn't even want anymore. The light above the dining table flickered slightly, as if even the electricity knew what was coming. I'd been living with my parents again for a few months. Just a temporary situation while I saved up. That's what I told myself anyway. They had always said, "Our door is always open." But I guess they never really meant it. It was more of a polite phrase people say because it sounds kind. But kindness has an expiration date in some families, and mine had just reached it. Mom set down her wine glass, her eyes sharp with something I couldn't quite name. Resentment maybe, or exhaustion, or both. "You need to decide," she said. "Either you give up the room, or you move out." Her words didn't sound like a suggestion. They sounded like a verdict. For a second I thought she was joking. I blinked, trying to understand what was happening. I was helping around the house. I paid rent. I wasn't a burden. But apparently that didn't matter. Dad didn't look at me. He just kept cutting his food slower than usual, like he was pretending to be calm. "You've been here long enough," he said finally. "It's time to let your brother have the room." My brother. Of course. The golden child. The one who always seemed to fit where I never did. He had a new job, a new car, and now apparently he needed my space too. I laughed, quietly, bitterly, because it was either that or cry. "So that's it? You're kicking me out because he wants my room?" Mom's mouth tightened. "Don't make this dramatic. You're an adult. You'll manage." That sentence, "you'll manage," was the same one she'd used when I was 13 and my best friend stopped talking to me. The same one she'd used when I got rejected from my dream college. The same one she always used when she didn't want to care too much. I didn't say another word. I just pushed back my chair, grabbed my bag, and left. Outside the air was cold. The kind of cold that bites at your skin until you feel awake in the worst way. I stared at my car and stared at the house I had once called home. Every window felt like an eye watching me, reminding me I didn't belong there anymore. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, but mostly I just felt small. I felt like I had spent my whole life knocking on doors that were never really open to me, begging to belong to people who had already decided there wasn't room for me in their version of family. For the next few weeks, I stayed at a friend's apartment. The couch wasn't comfortable, and the city noise kept me up at night. But somehow, I felt freer than I ever did under my parents' roof. It's strange how even a small, borrowed space can feel more like home when no one's measuring how much air you take up. I started working longer hours, throwing myself into my job like it was the only thing that still made sense. I told myself that success was the only language my parents ever understood. If I could just build something undeniable, something big enough, they would finally have to see me. So, I stopped waiting for their approval. I stopped waiting for an apology. I started saving. Every paycheck became a brick in the invisible house I was building inside my head. A house made of every "you'll manage" they'd ever thrown at me. The nights were lonely. I won't pretend they weren't. There were evenings when I'd stare at my phone, fighting the urge to call them, hoping they might reach out first. But they never did. My birthday came and went with just a text, "Hope you're doing well." No call, no visit. Just words with no warmth. So, I built my own warmth. I learned to cook meals that tasted like comfort. I lit candles that smelled like safety. I hung curtains that let the sun spill in like forgiveness. I was piecing myself together, little by little, without realizing that healing often looks like stubborn survival. A year later, I was sitting in a coffee shop on a rainy afternoon when I saw it, "A for sale" sign in front of a beautiful 2-story house online. I almost scrolled past it until I noticed the address. It was on the same street as my parents. My heart stuttered for a second. The rational part of me said, "No, that's too much. That's too close." But another part of me, the part that remembered packing my bags with shaking hands and no goodbye, whispered, "Why not?" I called the realtor that same day. The process was grueling. Paperwork, inspections, endless waiting. But I didn't stop. Every signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I had left behind at that dinner table. Every document was a quiet act of defiance. When I finally got the keys, I drove straight there. The house stood tall, elegant, with white shutters and a wide porch that looked out over the street. Across the road, I could see the familiar silhouette of my parents' house. For a long time I just sat in my car and stared. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you realize you don't need anyone to give you permission to exist anymore. The day I moved in, I carried each box myself. There was something deeply satisfying about placing things where I wanted them, not where someone else said they belonged. I painted the walls a soft cream color, hung photos of places that made me feel alive, and for the first time in my life, every inch of space felt earned. Sometimes, when I stood on the balcony and looked across the street, I'd see my parents' curtains shift. I knew they'd seen me. I wondered what they thought. Did they feel guilty, proud, annoyed? Maybe all three. One Sunday morning, I was watering the plants when Mom came out to get the mail. Our eyes met briefly. She hesitated, then gave a small wave. I waved back. That was it. No words, no apologies, just acknowledgement. And somehow that was enough. Because by then, I had learned that closure isn't something someone else can hand you. It's something you decide to take for yourself. It's the quiet moment you stop replaying the hurt and start choosing peace over proof. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, whispering that maybe I should have tried harder to fix things. But then I'd look around at the life I built, the house that stood because I refused to collapse. And I'd remind myself that love shouldn't have to be earned by suffering. I still remember that dinner like it was yesterday. The sharp sound of Mom's glass against the table, the weight of Dad's silence, the sting of being told to choose between a room and my dignity. But now, when I think of that night, I don't feel the same ache. I feel gratitude, because sometimes, losing your place in someone else's home is the only way to find your own. There's something poetic about it, really. They told me to give up a room, and I ended up buying a house. They told me to leave, and I learned how to arrive, for myself. I don't live across the street as a way to remind them of what they did. I live there because it reminds me of what I overcame. Every morning when I open my curtains and see their house across the road, I don't see the pain anymore. I see distance measured not in feet, but in growth. There's a little garden out front now, roses, lavender, and a lemon tree that's finally starting to bloom. It's funny how plants thrive when they're given space, light, and care. Maybe people aren't all that different. I built my life the same way I tended that garden. With patience, with quiet determination, with faith that something beautiful could grow out of what once felt broken. Sometimes I'll sit on the porch at dusk, the golden light washing over the street, and I'll think about all the versions of me that got me here. The scared girl in the car that night, the one who didn't know where she belonged, the one who thought she had to earn love by being small. I want to tell her she made it, that she's safe now, that she didn't need their approval to be enough. And maybe, deep down I hope that when my parents look out their window and see the house across from theirs, they see more than just walls and windows. Maybe they see the daughter who refused to disappear. I don't know if they'll ever say they're sorry. I don't need them to anymore. Because I've learned that sometimes, silence can be an apology too. The kind that comes not in words, but in the way people finally stop pretending you'll come back asking for less than you deserve. There's a particular freedom in building a life so steady that no one else can shake it. Sometimes, late at night, I walk barefoot across the wooden floors, the house quiet and still. I'll pause in the middle of the living room and just breathe. The space echoes softly, mine, all mine. Every creak and shadow feels like a promise kept. I used to think home was a place people gave you. Now I know it's something you give yourself. The journey from that dinner table to this house wasn't just about distance. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming the voice that always got drowned out. Reclaiming the dignity that got chipped away every time I was told I was too much or not enough. Reclaiming the belief that I deserve a life that feels like mine. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed quiet that night. If I'd said, "Okay, take the room," maybe things would have been easier. Maybe they would have been proud of me for being accommodating, for shrinking again to make space for someone else. But then I look around at everything I built, the sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of lavender drifting in from the garden, the peace that hums quietly in every corner, and I know I made the right choice. I chose myself, and that choice changed everything. Because here's the truth. Sometimes the people who raise you can't see who you're becoming. They still see the child they could control, not the adult who can stand tall without their permission. That's not your fault. It's not even entirely theirs. It's just part of growing up, the painful part no one warns you about. The moment when love and independence start pulling in opposite directions, and you have to choose which one won't destroy you. I chose to love them from across the street, from a distance that protected my peace. Every now and then, I'll catch a glimpse of Dad mowing the lawn, or Mom watering her plants. We don't talk much, just small nods, polite smiles. There's still a gap between us that words probably can't fill, but there's also something softer now. Time has a way of sanding down even the sharpest edges. And maybe that's enough. Maybe some stories don't end with forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Maybe some just end quietly, with understanding, with peace, with two houses facing each other across the street, each holding people who finally learned how to live without trying to fix each other. I used to think home was about belonging. Now I think it's about becoming. And every time I step out onto my porch, coffee in hand, the morning light spilling over everything I've built, I can't help but smile. Because once upon a time, I was told to give up a room. And instead, I claimed my life. I learned that peace doesn't come from moving back in. It comes from building forward. For the longest time, I thought healing meant going backward. I thought it meant returning to where the hurt started, fixing it, rewriting it, and finally earning the love I was denied. I thought if I just became good enough, patient enough, quiet enough, I could walk back into that same house and finally be accepted without feeling like a visitor in my own life. But I was wrong. Healing doesn't live in the places that broke you. It waits on the other side of the door you were too scared to close. When they told me to leave, I thought my world was ending. I stood there with the sound of their voices still echoing down the hallway, the smell of dinner still hanging heavy in the air, and my heart pounding like it didn't know what to do without belonging. The walls of that house had watched me grow, cry, dream, and shrink all at once. Every corner held a memory I didn't know how to let go of. But that night I had no choice. I packed my things in silence, trying to make peace with the idea that maybe peace just wasn't meant for me. I slept on a couch for weeks after that. My life fit into 3 suitcases and 1 cracked phone screen. Some nights I'd wake up in the dark and reach for a light switch that wasn't there. Other nights, I'd scroll through old pictures of the house, convincing myself I had made a mistake leaving. I kept thinking maybe if I apologized enough, if I showed them I could be smaller, softer, more obedient, they would let me come back. But deep down, I knew that even if they opened the door again, it wouldn't feel like home. Because once you've been asked to leave a place you loved, the air there never feels the same. Still, I couldn't let go right away. I drove past the house sometimes, pretending I was just passing through, but really I was hoping to see something different, an open window, a light left on, any sign that maybe they missed me too. Instead, I saw the same thing every time, a house that kept standing without me. And a reminder that life doesn't stop waiting just because your heart does. I started working longer hours to distract myself. The office became my safe place. The hum of computers, the smell of coffee, the sound of my own name being said with respect instead of disappointment. I found a small apartment with peeling wallpaper and noisy neighbors, but it was mine. For the first time, I could leave dishes in the sink without hearing someone sigh about it. I could play music at midnight and dance barefoot in the kitchen just because I wanted to. It was messy, imperfect, and free. I used to think peace would come when things went back to normal. But peace doesn't sound like footsteps returning down a hallway. It sounds like laughter you give yourself permission to have again. It looks like sunlight streaming through a window you paid for with your own name on the lease. It feels like a deep breath that doesn't catch halfway through, because you're scared someone will notice how happy you are without their approval. Every paycheck became a quiet victory. Every little thing I bought, a couch, a lamp, a rug, wasn't just furniture. It was proof that I could stand on my own, proof that leaving didn't mean losing. I stopped telling myself I'd go back once things calmed down. I stopped trying to fix a story that was never written for me in the first place. The first time I signed a mortgage paper, my hands trembled. The amount looked unreal, too big, too heavy. But then I remembered the night they told me to give up my room or move out, and suddenly, that number didn't scare me. It fueled me. Because I had learned that the weight of responsibility feels different when you're carrying it for yourself, not for people who used to make you feel like a burden. When I got the keys to my own house, I didn't cry right away. I just stood in the doorway, the smell of new paint filling my lungs, and let the silence wrap around me. It wasn't empty, it was full. Full of everything I had lost and everything I was finally gaining back. My peace didn't come from being let back in. It came from stepping forward without waiting for permission. People like to talk about forgiveness like it's a door you open for someone else. But sometimes forgiveness is the house you build for yourself when there's stopped feeling safe. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about creating something beautiful from the pieces they left behind. There were still days when the loneliness hit me hard, when I'd come home from work to a quiet space and feel the ache of what could have been. But then I'd walk into my kitchen, pour a glass of water, look around at everything I built, and remember I wasn't abandoned, I was redirected. The universe had to shake me out of that old version of my life so I could finally live mine fully. I planted flowers in the front yard because I wanted color, life, proof that growth could happen anywhere, even in soil that once felt like failure. Every morning I'd water them, whispering little promises to myself that I wouldn't go back, not even in memory. The petals opened slowly, stubbornly, just like me. Some nights, I'd sit on my porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, the stars scattered above like tiny reminders of how small and yet how infinite I was. I'd think about the girl who stood crying in her car that night, begging the universe for a place to belong. I wanted to tell her she'd find it. Not because someone would give it to her, but because she'd build it herself. I learned that peace isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or validation. It's quiet, it's steady. It's the kind of stillness that settles deep in your bones when you realize you don't have to prove anything anymore. It's knowing you don't need to move backward to heal. You just need to move honestly forward, even if that means walking alone for a while. There's something sacred about the sound of your own keys jingling in your hand after years of borrowing everyone else's permission. Something powerful about turning a doorknob that leads only to your peace. I don't check my phone for messages that never come anymore. I don't wait for an apology that might never be spoken. I don't need it, because peace isn't about making them understand. It's about understanding yourself enough to stop needing them to. I used to crave the comfort of familiarity, even if it hurt. Now I crave growth, even when it's uncomfortable. Because growth doesn't ask for permission. It demands courage. And courage is what took me from that dinner table to this life I built with my own hands. There's a certain kind of beauty in realizing that what once felt like rejection was actually redirection. That being told to leave wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Preparation for a life where I wouldn't have to ask to exist, where my worth wasn't decided by anyone else's comfort. I stopped driving by their house eventually, not because I hated them, but because I didn't need to see it anymore. I didn't need to measure my healing against the place that hurt me. I was too busy building forward. The house I live in now doesn't echo with old arguments. It hums with music, laughter, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows what she survived. It's not perfect. The floors creak, the roof leaks a little when it rains, but it's mine. Every flaw feels like a story instead of a wound. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about the word home, how I used to think it was tied to a location or a group of people. Now I know it's something I carry inside me. It moves with me, it grows with me, it doesn't depend on anyone's permission. I learned that peace isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about building what's next. It's about choosing not to reopen the same door, just because it's familiar. It's about believing that even if they couldn't love you right, you still deserve a life that feels right. The night they told me to leave, I thought I'd lost everything. But looking back now, I see that I gained something far greater. I gained the strength to build forward, the courage to start again, and the grace to understand that sometimes the only way home is through yourself.